since I'll be reading.
Okay. And then I'm going to have people actually do the traditional layers, you know, the currency of the piece, just
Okay.
for fun.
Yes.
I'm moving this, I'm moving out in front of, I'm moving the Justice and Generosity part to,
Your neighbor.
no, before, won't you be my neighbor, so it won't be confusing.
Greet your neighbor. Yes. Oh, yes, that's plenty loud enough, isn't it? Thank you. My name is David Howell, and I'm the worship associate for this morning. My pronouns are he, him, and his, whichever kind of male pronouns fit in there. So, good morning. How nice to see everyone. What a pleasure to be all together. I don't know how I ever did Sundays without this. I just did the New York Times crossword puzzle, and that wasn't anywhere near as friendly and nice as seeing all these happy faces. We are a church, a group, a congregation that welcomes everyone, regardless of what their individual, intellectual, political, theological views may be. We are here for other reasons than that, not to argue with each other or to convert each other, but simply to be together. In the announcements and events, all of which are in your order of service here, there are a couple that I was asked to make a special point of. The first is that First Sunday now is potluck. And today is the first Sunday, and all first Sundays from now on will be potluck. So please stay after that. Reminder also that a congregational meeting is on March 24th. That is, yes, 3 weeks from today, and please stay for that when that comes up. And I was also asked to note one thing on the second page here, and that is the Berea College Folk Roots Ensemble to give a free concert here on March 23rd on 7:30 p.m. They are an amazing group and something that I certainly hope to get to see, expect to get to see. And I've been asked to mention that volunteers are still needed for this event. So if you have time and would like to help out on that, just send an email to the address there at the bottom of that announcement, and you will be taken up for it. So it is time for Reverend Carol to bring us into the proper kind of mood and the proper kind of ritual.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all this morning. I want to extend a special welcome to our folks who are with us virtually, online, whether you're here with us right now, at the time this service is happening, or at some point in the future. We're glad you're here. If I haven't met you yet, either in person or virtually, I am Reverend Carol Bodeau. I am privileged to serve here as minister. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I do want to, before we invite the bowl to call us into our worship space, I want to highlight a couple of other things that are coming up in the next few weeks. So in addition to our first Sunday potluck, part of the reason we moved potluck to first Sundays is because we are also starting our first Sunday spiritual discussion group after the service. So for those of you who are interested, this is an opportunity to get together in a small group of people and talk about spiritual topics. We're going to begin over the next couple of months with just talking about journeys, our own personal journeys. Those might be religious, psychological, spiritual, frame them however you like. This is an opportunity to talk about our journeys, about what we believe. So if you're staying for that today, we'll spend a few minutes gathering food, and I think what we'll do is we can actually have our potluck food while we talk. So that will be in one of the rooms down the back hallway. And also, just a little heads up about what's coming later in this month. Next week, we're having a service about humor, so be sure to be here for that. It should be a lot of fun. And then the 3 Sundays after that, we're going to do a little tour of the Abrahamic religions. So we're going to, on the last 3 Sundays in March, we're going to talk about the 3 faith traditions, all of which have major holidays, holy days this month. In Islam, this is the month of Ramadan. And for the people who practice the Jewish faith, Purim is this month. And for Christians, it is Easter. So we're going to have a service for each of those in the coming weeks. For Purim, we will be doing a Purim spiel, which is a play. So if you are interested in participating in the Purim spiel, which I am currently writing, and would like to be an actor in that event, please see me after the service or send me an email so I know how many characters to write into the Purim spiel, okay? So today we're going to be talking about being a good neighbor and what that means. As I invite our bowl to sound, I would like to invite you to call to mind a difficult neighbor. Not an easy neighbor, those we know what to do with. I invite you to call to mind a difficult neighbor. It doesn't have to be a physical neighbor in your neighborhood. Someone who is in your sphere of connection, community, who is difficult. And as the bowl sounds for us, I invite you to simply allow yourself to be aware of that person or being or group of people as you settle into this time of really reflecting on how to be a good neighbor.
Reverend Carol will be lighting the chalice and then the 2 candles for good things and bad things. I always enjoy looking for something to read whenever I am the worship associate. And it wasn't hard. I just thought for a second and came up with a poem that everyone here will know. It is such a classic. No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manner of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. When I read that, it did occur to me that the poem specifically refers to death and loss, that we're always sharing that, but it's equally true, as our two candles here are designated, that we also share life and joy together, something I have become particularly aware of lately. And it is that joy, that sharing of joy and life, which we need to pay attention to as well.
Thanks, David. So today's service, some of you might see that in the order of service, there's a phrase that says reverse offering. And since today is our reverse offering, and we're going to reverse things a little bit, we're going to reverse it in the order of service too. I have spontaneously decided that we're going to talk about justice and generosity and the reverse offering first. So, many of you know that we are coming up on our Canvas campaign. Money is in the air. This is when we talk about money. And of course, financial support is important to any institution. That March 24th congregational meeting will be when the congregation will receive the preliminary draft budget to think about and talk about, and then we will be making financial commitments to figure out what our final budget will be for next year. So that's on our minds. Financial support is really important to keeping the institution running and to keeping our personal lives running as we try to care for our families and make a difference in the world. We all get to think about how we're going to spend our resources. So today we're going to think about that in a slightly different way. Of course, this is also the chance for me to remind you that there is a box in the back of the room that you can put your pledge in, that you can put a donation in. There's a QR code on that for those of you with us virtually. There's a QR code. You can go to our website. But we all handle our resources differently, all right? Some of us are big savers. We put away money every month with discipline, and others of us are not big savers. We're big spenders who feel that cash is most valuable when it's used to bring us joy, when it's flowing. Some of us have plenty of money and are able to save regularly and still have a little extra for things like travel or leisure items. And others of us live paycheck to paycheck, not exactly sure how or if we'll be able to make the bills next month, especially if something happens that's unexpected, like an illness, the loss of a job, or the need to pay a vet bill or replace a car. Some of us have investments, and others of us have to put our essentials on credit cards sometimes. So we all come from very different places, and maybe we're in a different place today than we were at another time in our lives, right? Maybe we've experienced very different financial and resource situations in the past from what we're experiencing today, for positive or negative. Maybe we've had times when we had more available resources and now we have less. Our focus today is on the fact that no matter what our circumstance, we can make a difference. We can all make a difference. Of course, we appreciate your financial donations to Westside. Those are essential. We also appreciate you showing up, your participation in a committee, bringing something to potluck. This morning, I rushed back to the kitchen and I was saying, it was short notice. We didn't give people much notice. It was going to be First Sundays. Do we have enough? And they're like, we got plenty of food. That's a contribution of resources. So we contribute time and energy and money and intelligence and wisdom and heartfulness, all these things. I have a question for Jerry Thornton in the back. Do we have a green sanctuary update this week? Yes. Could you please come and share that with us now? That would be awesome. This is another way people are contributing, is by working on our Green Sanctuary Committee. So this is one of our major justice and generosity projects we're working on right now, and Jerry's going to give us an update on that.
Well, this is supposed to be a green moment, and I prepared some thoughts on wetlands. Do you know what a wetland is? Yes, I'm sure most of you do. You think about it, it's not a dry land, okay. You might think of the Everglades or the Okefenokee, which are huge wetlands that a lot of people call swamps, like the big cypress swamp down in Florida. There are also extensive wetlands along seashores, like in South Louisiana, and along large, low-gradient rivers like the Mississippi, where there are hundreds of old oxbow lakes that once were river channels that are now isolated wetlands, except during times of flood. But most wetlands are much smaller, like what are called prairie potholes in Minnesota and the Dakotas, or small bogs like in northeast Tennessee. They can be permanent, meaning wet year-round, or seasonal, usually in the springtime or whenever the rainy season is, or ephemeral, little depressions that only hold water after a storm. Regardless of what kind of wetland they are amazingly important to us as hotspots of biodiversity, supporting everything from salamanders and frogs and fish to ducks and geese and whooping cranes and deer. So they're very important for biodiversity. Many of the wetlands have very unique plants, like pitcher plants and sundews and things like that, and many of them are threatened or endangered species of plants. But wetlands also are important as recharge zones for underground aquifers that provide drinking water for cities and irrigation water for farmlands. And they filter pollutants out of the stormwater so that the streams and underground aquifers are cleaner than they might otherwise be. And very importantly, they hold back and retard floodwaters. So they're very important to protecting cities and downstream neighborhoods from large floods. And finally, they are aesthetically beautiful. If you've ever spent any time in the wetlands and enjoying the sounds of the frogs and the birds and just the wind through the grasses and cattails, they're wonderful. Until a few months ago, all the wetlands in the United States were protected from destruction and pollution under the Clean Water Act. But then the Supreme Court held that the federal law could only protect wetlands that are visually linked to a larger body of water like a river or a lake. Although this decision completely ignores the reality of the hydrologic cycle and how water behaves in nature, it is now the law of the land. And the Federal Environmental Protection Agency can no longer protect over half of the wetlands in the United States. The court's decision leaves it to the states to decide whether to protect the so-called unconnected wetlands that are no longer protected by federal law. So here's the good news. Currently, Tennessee's law is as broad as the federal law used to be before the Supreme Court decision. So our wetlands are currently protected across the state. The bad news is that the Tennessee legislature has before it a bill that would cut Tennessee's wetland protections back to be no more protected than the federal wetlands. This would remove over half of the wetlands in Tennessee from any kind of legal protection. This would be a disaster for the environment in Tennessee. There would be a huge loss of small wetlands to development and farming, greatly reducing the biodiversity and wildlife habitat and all those other functions like flood control and filtering water for pollutants and recharging groundwater. There would be larger and dirtier floods and smaller and more polluted aquifers. So can anything be done to stop this? Well, of course. You are citizens of the state of Tennessee. You have agency. You can contact your legislatures and urge them to vote against this pending bill. Alice and I were in Nashville last Wednesday with a coalition of environmental groups at what was called Conservation Education Day, where we lobbied our legislators to vote against this wetlands bill and to vote for two other very important bills that are environmentally related. And I have a lot more information about those on the little table back there where, yeah, Alice is showing you a little poop sheet that we have on the three bills. So I'll just call those to your attention and let your conscience be your guide, and I'd be glad to discuss any of these with you during coffee hour or the potluck. So that's a thought for the green moment.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jerry. One of the ways we can, take action is by educating ourselves and learning about what's happening. Because one of the biggest ways that we aren't good neighbors is by being insulated and not paying attention to what's going on around us. So thank you very much for that. So Jerry points out that some of our neighbors might also not necessarily be humans. There might be other species that are our neighbors too, that we might consider as we're thinking about being neighbors. So I want you to do a little exercise with the neighbors in the room. How many of you have ever been to a traditional conventional church that passes the peace? Oh, I love the faces you're making. There's some like, oh yeah, okay. Passing the peace is the turn to your neighbor, and David, will you stand up? And I'll demonstrate the traditional way we do it in the Catholic Church. You turn to your neighbor and you say, peace be with you. Remember that? Peace be with you. And then you reply, and peace be with you.
And peace be with you.
Now, you don't have to do that version of it. Trigger warning right there. Okay, you can sit down now if you'd like. But we're going to take a minute to greet our neighbors. I know you're going to start talking, which is awesome. We're going to let it take as much time as it takes. But I would invite you to turn to someone that you haven't already greeted today. Maybe someone that you don't actually know very well, and say good morning, sincerely ask them how they're doing, and just spend a moment saying good morning to each other. everybody start to wind it up and head back to your seat. I love it when it works. Like I said, I knew it would take a long time to get you back to your seats, but you can kind of start to head back to your seat. You will have lots of time to talk after the service this morning. You'll have lots of time to talk. All right. All right. See, that was fun. That was fun. So I want to tell you a story about, take your time, no hurry. I want to tell you a story about an experience I had many years ago that sort of changed my personal perspective on neighbors. So many years ago, when I was in grad school, I was living outside of San Francisco. This was actually long before I discovered Unitarian Universalism or went to seminary. I was doing graduate work in Northern California. And it was wintertime, and I was attending the annual conference of what's called the MLA, the Modern Language Association. That's where all us literature geeks go for the big conference. So I was attending the MLA in downtown San Francisco. I lived about 30 minutes south of the city in a pretty nice suburb. But like most grad students, I did not have money. Right? I lived in a pretty nice area, and my husband at the time and I were scraping by, but I certainly wasn't driving into the city, and I certainly wasn't parking in the city. So I was taking the subway into town and taking the subway and then walking like 6 blocks from the subway station into the conference center. And it was winter, it was January, so it was cold, and it was San Francisco, so it wasn't like pretty snow cold, it was like wet, drippy cold. And that year, I remember this holiday season, it was sort of just into the new year. I remember this very well because we were living on peanut butter curry ramen, like 4 days a week. Like it was a lot of peanut butter and a lot of ramen. So I didn't have cash. We were between paychecks at the point that I was going to the conference, and my husband was out of town. So that week, things were really, really, really tight. And I was thinking about that, actually. It was on my mind as I was walking from the subway station to the conference center, wishing I had a car that I could park in the parking garage. As I got within a few blocks of the conference center, a man who was sitting on the sidewalk and was clearly living on the street there started asking me for money. And I didn't actually have any money. Like literally, I had no money. So I didn't feel able to give him cash. But add to that my conditioning. As a white woman in the United States, I had a lot of conditioning to be very afraid of a large African-American man experiencing homelessness. So I kind of scrunched down in my coat and tried to hurry past him. And I was mumbling, "Oh, sorry, I don't have any, sorry." He said to me, "Well, at least give me your scarf. It's cold out here." I was wearing a nice wool scarf that I kind of instinctively pulled tighter around myself as I hurried away. But within a few steps, something inside me actually woke up, past my conditioning, past my fear, past my own worries, and said, "Hold on a minute, wait a minute. I could give him my scarf." I had another one just like it at home. I had plenty of warm clothes. My husband's family was quite wealthy. We had all kinds of nice objects. I had been brought up fairly comfortably. I wasn't that bad off, actually. So I turned around and I walked back to the man and I took off my scarf and I held it out to him and I said, "You are right. You need this way more than I do. You absolutely can have it." And he was shocked. He sort of took a step back and he seemed stunned and he said, no, that's okay, really." And I said, "No, really, I actually have another scarf like this. I don't need it. I want you to have it." And he refused, insisting that I should keep it because it was such a cold day. That makes me want to cry even telling the story, right? Bless you, he kept repeating. Thank you for just offering. That story is one of the most moving experiences I've ever had in my life. This man who was struggling with the cold and dealing with living on the street, really what he needed was me to see him and to meet him as an equal fellow human, a person who was the same as me, dealing with the cold, who deserved my attention and consideration. He did not deserve my conditioned response of fear and avoidance and denial. Being a good neighbor can take a lot of different forms. Some of you may have seen there's a relatively new show on ABC called What Would You Do? Has anybody seen What Would You Do? I encourage you to Google it and check out some of the back episodes. Okay, so it's one of those hidden camera shows. And of course, What Would You Do is based on the Christian phrase, what would Jesus do? Right? You'll see in a lot of Christian communities, you'll actually see t-shirts or handbands that say WWJD, what would Jesus do? The show is called What Would You Do? And it's a hidden camera show where they set people up by putting actors in public locations and watching and recording their responses to situations that require good neighbor tactics. And it's a very justice-oriented show, too, at least as far as what I've seen of it. So here's some of the kinds of scenarios they set up to record bystanders' responses. A restaurant owner refusing to serve food to a homeless person, even when other diners offer to pay for the food. But the restaurant owner says, absolutely not, no, I can't set that precedent. I can't give you food, because you're not the right kind of customer. Another example is public hazing, fake public hazing, mind you. These are actors of fraternity and sorority recruits. So they'll set up a hazing scenario and see how people respond. People harassing the parent of a mixed-race child with the child present. How do people respond? Responses to struggles by a service worker with disabilities of different sorts. Fat shaming, racial slurs, anti-trans behaviors, and basically prejudicial actions by actors. Also, some of the scenarios include a young couple discussing an unplanned pregnancy, things like that. Have you ever been in a situation, in a restaurant, at a park, at an event, where you were a witness to something happening that invited your intervention? I remember one time when I was on the beach near San Francisco, watching a man abusing his dog. And I was furious. But he was a big guy and the dog was a German Shepherd. The guy was clearly violent. So I paused, but then I couldn't take it anymore. So I turned to the man and I said, you need to stop it now. That's unacceptable. And he was, as you might guess, not very happy with me. And he threatened me. And I couldn't control what he did with the dog after we left that parking lot, but at least in that moment, the abuse stopped. Same thing with a mother verbally abusing a small child in front of my house one time. I simply stepped outside the front door and said, do you need help? Is there a problem? Is there anything I can do? And she lit up the sky with the words she said to me. And I couldn't control what happened to that family after they left that moment. But for that moment, the abuse stopped, and that child knew that at least one other adult didn't think it was okay. At least that child knew that one adult was thinking, no, something's not okay here. This needs to stop. These can be these are somewhat dramatic examples, and not every time or in every situation or is every person going to be able to intervene, and it's not even necessarily appropriate to do so. So if you watch What Would You Do, you will see scenarios where the people who are the bystanders are in conflict, right? So you've got a group of people, and they argue with each other. So one of the recent shows that I watched was one where the actor is portraying a woman experiencing homelessness, and she comes in, and the actor who's portraying the bartender refuses to serve her food. And then all the rest of the people at the bar get in an argument and debate. One guy is adamant, you're doing the right thing, you shouldn't feed her any, you don't want to start a precedent, you don't want, you can't let that happen. And the other people are saying, this is a human being who needs food. So there's tension, and these are the people who are being recorded, these aren't actors. And one man says, this isn't okay. We need to give her food. The camera crew comes in before a fight starts and says to the man who's saying, absolutely, we need to give this woman food, who's willing to pay for it. And they say, why do you feel this way? Because she's a human being. Because she's a human being. They repeat the scenario, and another woman sitting at the bar says, I will give you food. And it turns out that the woman in this particular scenario is herself experiencing homelessness, but happens to have the support of someone who's letting her stay at their house, happens to have a few friends. She happens to be a regular customer who's basically in the same situation as the actor portraying a woman experiencing homelessness. What kinds of responses do those stories bring up in you? What memories do you have of your own experiences? What kinds of feelings does it bring up? These kinds of situations bring up fear. They bring up anxiety, they bring up anger, they bring up avoidance, they bring up passion. So that phrase, what would Jesus do? Now you can replace Jesus' name with anyone that you admire for living their values. What would the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King do? What would Dr. Maya Angelou do? What would the Buddha do? What would your great Aunt Alice or Grace or whoever whom you admire, what would she do? Whoever it is. Sometimes it can be good to ask, in a situation like this, if I were living my values fully, like fill in the blank person I admire, what would I do? Can I stop that automatic response long enough to turn around? So today, I am about to launch a project for you to get some experience with this, to take some action. At Westside, we are committed to living the values we proclaim. And we need to put our money and our bodies and our voices and our actions behind those values. So today, I am going to give you money and encouragement. So David, if you would get the basket. So what we've got here is we've got baskets that have envelopes in them. They have some amount of money in them. If you are with us virtually, all you need to do is email me at revcarol@westsideuuc.org or email the office, and I will make sure you get some too. So anybody can participate. So what I want you to do is, this is per family. We'll see if, I think we have enough for every family in the building, whatever size your family is, 1 to 10, whatever you consider your family. One envelope per family, and then if we have extras, we'll spread them around more. So take an envelope. If you are emailing me virtually to let me know you'd like to participate, please include in your message some way that I can get the money to you, whether you'd like that to be Venmo or PayPal, or whether you'd like that snail mail, whatever it is. So one of the things we need to address as we're doing this is one of the most convenient, easy, comfortable ways for us to make a difference in the world is with money. But I am going to challenge you to put into whatever you decide to do with this some kind of personal component that isn't just money. See if you, okay, I agree. That's, Virginia's like, what the heck do you mean by that? I will explain. It's good. So it's easy to just send somebody a check. But what if we go just a little step further? What if we say, I'm going to contribute to this cause and I'm going to go to one of their meetings? Or I'm going to go talk to someone who knows about this program. Or I'm going to actually go to that part of town. Or I'm going to go visit that business, or whatever it is, right? How we doing on envelopes there, David? Do we have enough, does it look like? Okay, good. All right. We're going to get to work on that part of it too. If some people get envelopes and other people don't, that's also going to be a good neighbor practice for us. So you can open your envelope, go ahead, and you will find inside your envelope something. In addition to the money or something, you will also find a little form that says, here's what I did. Okay? And so in the next couple of months, in early June, starting in around June, some of you are going to get to tell your stories about what you experienced. And it's not just about, oh, I did this neat thing. It's how did it impact you? Are we out? Okay, so we're about 3 short. Fantastic. That's perfect. Okay, that's not a bad thing because we're neighbors. Okay, did you see that? I would like to just say thank you. People who already have been good neighbors who are like, I'm going to pass along my envelope to someone else. That's a good neighbor thing. All right, so you will discover that they have a range of amounts from $5 to $40 because we don't all have equal financial resources. We do not all have equal financial resources. Did anyone receive an envelope that did not have any money in it? Okay, would someone like to, let's take the microphone. David, could you take this microphone? Yep. Brad, is this one on? Awesome. Take that to, Barbara, you got one of those? Take that to Barbara. Could you read to us what your piece of paper says? Some of you got envelopes with this in them.
What did you spend your just...
Oh, not that one, the other thing.
I don't have another thing.
Look inside. Empty.
Empty.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, pass the microphone back to Morgan. Chris got it. Some of you got completely empty envelopes. Ooh, that's fascinating.
I have the one that Barbara had, but I also have this. Congratulations. You get the ultimate creativity challenge. Think of a way to engage in justice and generosity with no spare cash on hand. You are challenged to do something of service in your community, defined any way you want, with your time, energy, and non-monetary resources. Please report back.
So if you did not get any money, that's your challenge. To creatively think of something that doesn't involve money as a way to be of service. So some of you are going to have to be creative without any cash, just like I was that winter in San Francisco. Doesn't mean you're without resources. It's harder, yes?
Digging holes, does that help?
Digging holes for the trees absolutely helps. Yes, that counts. Woohoo! Okay? Sending a letter to save the wetlands absolutely helps. All right, what are you thinking right now? Let's just take a minute. Let's hear some responses. David, you want to take the microphone back there to Jim? Had his hand up.
This has reminded me of a favorite Buddhist tale of a monk who was a hermit living up above a river. And all he had was a rice bowl and a loincloth. That was his total possessions. And one evening he came back from getting water and found a thief stealing his rice bowl. So he gave him the loincloth and the thief left. And he sat down in the edge of his cave, looked out and said, "What a pity I couldn't give him this beautiful sunset."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we might feel inspired we might feel, some of us might be going, yay, this is awesome, this is great, or like, sheesh, already, am I not doing enough? Right? Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? Now I have to do this too? And besides, what can I do with $5? Right? That might be a response. What am I going to do with $5? Or maybe you might feel some kind of helplessness or confusion, like, I have no clue what I'm going to do. No clue. We can have all sorts of responses to these kinds of opportunities, and most of them will have some shading of my initial response on the street that day in San Francisco. We will feel and become aware of our biases. Maybe our bias is, well, I'm great at giving cash. I'll just add cash to this. I only got $5, but I can add a 20 and stick it in the mail, and that'll be great. That's conditioning. That's reflecting our previous experiences. What if we all tried just a little bit to step out of our previous conditioning? What if we tried something different or new? Our core assumptions, our core fears, our core expectations. Okay, one of the key ways that we as individuals often, and particularly Unitarian Universalists, like to do things is we are some pretty strong individualists. We'll be like, yep, I'll go home, I'll figure this out, I'll check it off my to-do list. Okay, does that feel familiar to anybody? Okay. Yep, the old to-do list. Okay, so we're going to go one step further. The trading floor is officially now open. I invite you to talk to one another and make some deals in this room. You can trade envelopes. You can pool envelopes in a group and make a plan together. You can give away your cash to someone who is more excited than you and let them manage your portion, so long as you stay involved in the process in some way. I don't care how. You can share ideas about possible ways you might use your offering. We are going to take 5 minutes. If I had a bell, I'd ring it. Oh, I do. I'll go ring the trading bell. I know where the bell is. It's over there on the lectern. The trading floor is open. You all can start connecting. And those of you attending virtually right now, feel free to do that in the chat. Everyone virtually can assume you're going to get some amount of cash or creativity boost that you can collaborate on using. So I'm going to ring the bell, and you all have 5 minutes to start making deals.
There's almost always people. Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. Well, I guess the first step is something that I thought about doing a long time ago, and then it just left me, and I never did it. I like to go back to things that I passed by, and then they kind of disappeared as I changed, and my world changed. Yeah. Yeah, think about when you were 5 years old and somebody came up to you were 8 or 10 or 15. Yeah.
At some point, I don't give to ask for money on the street. That's
into my mind is, so the next time that happens to me, and I really don't feel like doing it, that's the time to do it. Yes, when the feelings are in the other direction. Yeah.
right. You guys will have more time to coordinate during potluck. I heard some brilliant things going on out there. I heard some, what do you mean, help trade? What does that mean? So that kind of confusion it's actually not a design flaw, it's a design enhancement of the system. The idea is that sometimes we don't know how to coordinate. We don't know how to connect with other people. So I heard some brilliant things happening. Ellen, can I tell what you guys did? I heard Ellen say, Ellen is gave the money to Morgan, who's going to donate it to Oak Ridge Animal Shelter for kitten milk replacement, and in addition to that, a bunch of people are going to bring supplies next week for the shelter to be delivered to the shelter. So anybody could help with that. See Morgan after the service. I also heard Bridget, you were saying you wanted to learn more and do something about
like medical expenses and drugs. I feel like we as people have no control. Like I would be like Bernie, raising hell about medicine because
Okay.
and I don't know who to raise hell to.
Okay, medical expenses, wanting to make a difference on the subject of medical expenses being too difficult for many people, but Bridget needs some help. Bridget needs some resources, she needs some information, she needs some collaboration. If you have any suggestions or ideas about how to start addressing that topic, please talk to Bridget. Anybody else got any requests of the whole community that we can share? Jim?
I work with vets who get caught up into the legal system. Many times, they are facing felony charges because they don't get to a probation agreement. It's because they're felony on the street.
Okay,
One like that is at risk of losing a foot because of diabetes.
okay.
Facing 2 years of incarceration because he was sleeping on his sister's couch 3 counties away.
I'm just going to repeat some of that so people virtually can hear it. Hang on one second. So what Jim is talking about is the needs of vets who often do not have either the housing or the transportation or the resources to get to important meetings that they need, including probation meetings and things like that. And, okay, what is the need?
The need is somebody to help with transportation.
Okay, transportation. So if someone wants to help with transportation for vets who are struggling, talk to Jim. Can you raise your hand so people can see who you are? Just like, yeah, that's Jim. Okay. All right. So you all can talk more during coffee hour. Sometimes we have these ideas and we're just like mystified about how to take the next step. The first step, the immediate next step, is talk to other people. Collaborate. It is easy to do things as individuals, but when we collaborate, we have more power, we have more wisdom, we can pool our resources, and we can make a bigger difference. So like I said, if you know, someone said to me, can I just donate it to the church? You absolutely can just do that, because then what you're doing is you're contributing to all the things we do collectively as a church. You can also come to the congregational meeting and vote. Right? You can contact your representative. Participating in democratic processes is an important way to make a difference as a neighbor. So we will have some services in June in which you will have the chance to tell the stories about how these things went. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a box out for the response forms, or you can email those responses to me. I'll put a box out, or you can email them to me, telling us what you did, how it went, and how it impacted you. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to invite Sandra to just play some music for us, and we're going to just sit quietly. And what I'd invite you to just hold in close to yourself while Sandra is playing the music is a little bit of how that all hit you. Not your strategizing about what you're going to do, but how does it feel? I heard some emotional responses out there. I'm not sure how to agree with other people. There's some struggle. I already feel confused, or I feel overwhelmed, or all kinds of different things. This is exciting. I feel passionate. I feel angry. So while Sandra plays, I invite you to just notice what's going on for you. Thank you, Sandra. Every one of us has the ability to make a difference. And the truth is, there are literally thousands of ways we can do that. Whether that neighbor is in our family, in our church, in the neighborhood where we live, or in our larger community. I want to invite you to call back to mind. Remember at the beginning of the service, I said, think of a difficult neighbor. Call back to mind that difficult neighbor. As we are getting ready to close our service, I'm going to invite us to hold those people, those beings who are the most difficult neighbors in the center of our gathering. So if you are willing and able and would like to stand and connect with everyone else in the community, I invite you to do so. You can hold your own hand. You do not have to hold anybody else's hand. Feel free to hold your own hand. Feel free to stay in your seat. Feel free to be on the edge. Feel free to be in the middle. It is up to you. And if you want to be in the middle and you're not, feel free to step up and in. That's right. Hold your own head. That's fabulous. We say at the center of Unitarian Universalism now that love, radical love that transforms the world, is who we are. We say at Westside that this is a place where love unites, caring connects, and community thrives. If we want to be those people who love large and live our values fully, we can start today. We can start right now. We can do it differently. If the way we've been doing it has been hard on us, we can do it with greater ease. If the way we've been doing it has felt like too much, we can do it with support. We can find joy in knowing that no matter what our financial situation is, no matter what our resources of time and energy are, together we can make a difference in the world. So go in peace, go in passion, and go to create the world we dream of. May it be so.